Do you remember how before the great global warming scare, we had another green one? The population bomb, how there'd be so many humans on this planet that billions of us would starve. You know, the trouble with these big green scares is they're really religions, and so the facts don't really count, which means that you have to just live long enough to finally be able to say, I told you it was fake. And how long do you have to live? Well, 55 years, to be exact. 55 years. And I say that because in 1968, a butterfly expert called Paul Ehrlich published a book, The Population Bomb, which was to make him an international guru, a huge media superstar, like Greta Thunberg today, and also quite rich. 2 million copies of The Population Bomb sold around the world, and a panic was created. And no wonder. I mean, the population bomb claimed we were breeding so many humans, the planet just couldn't cope. And the book opened with these words: "The battle to feed all of humanity is over." In the 1970s, hundreds of millions of people were starved to death in spite of any crash programs embarked upon now. And of course, if that sounds familiar, it's because exactly the same kind of message of doom you're hearing again today. It's like an echo chamber. Only this time it comes from global warmists saying too many people are actually causing global warming.
People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
And just as with Greta Thunberg today, 55 years ago, Paul Ehrlich's message was catnip for the media. They loved it because, of course, the media always feeds on doom and disaster. And Ehrlich gave them that by the truckload.
Sometime in the next 15 years, the end will come. And by the end, I mean an utter breakdown of the capacity of the planet to support humanity.
Now, that doom went viral, first in the United States media and then around the world. It's like people really, really want to believe, still do, that humans are doomed by their own evil.
Overpopulation, so long predicted, has stolen upon us. It's getting worse week by week. If we do not, by humane means, limit our numbers, then numbers are going to be limited by more famines and shortages and consequent social conflicts.
Honestly, it went everywhere. I mean, you had countries like China and India forcibly sterilizing people. China's one-child policy, the whole lot. It conquered the world, this theory. And Ehrlich just kept amping it up. 1970, for instance, he wrote a short story projecting that 4 billion people would starve to death in the 1980s, including, he said, 65 million Americans. This is a little scenario he had in a short story. The battle to feed all of humanity, it was over. He's quite definite about it. Except, of course, you know, it wasn't. He was wrong, completely wrong. There was instead a green revolution, plant technology, which gave us better crops. We now grow, in fact, more food than ever. And famines outside of war zones are now virtually unknown. And funnily enough, global warming may have helped there, because a slightly warmer planet with more rain and a little more carbon dioxide, which is plant food, plants need it, is actually great for plant growth. You see, a NASA study has even found the planet is getting greener. Humanity on the whole has never lived longer or healthier as well. So Ehrlich was totally wrong. Totally wrong about that mass starvation being locked in. I mean, the proportion of food, of people short of food, has actually halved, even though the world's population has meanwhile doubled. Half the proportion of people hungry, twice the number of people to feed. That's not bad. But Ehrlich, it turns out now, was also wrong about something else there. 55 years later, many countries now face exactly the opposite problem to what he predicted. Not overpopulation, underpopulation. Last week, the Club of Rome, this is a think tank of the left, which back then really amped up Ehrlich's population scare because it kept warning, yes, and besides, we're also going to run out of oil and other resources. It's going to be a disaster by the end of the century. That didn't happen either. And now it's given up on this population bomb stuff. It's run up the white flag. Except, of course, now you see it in very small little stories at the back of the paper or deep in the website, instead of right up in your face, population bomb. It seems that research it's funded, the Club of Rome, has now predicted the world's population will actually peak much sooner and much lower than long thought as people get richer and can afford to have fewer children. It's going to top out at 8.6 billion people just in 2050, not the 11 billion by the end of the century, predicted by the United Nations 60 years ago. Not 11 billion, 8.6. That's a big difference. And then, of course, after 2050, it's going to fall, and by a lot, to 7 billion people by the end of the century on current trends, according to the Club of Rome paper. That's actually nearly 1 billion fewer people at the end of the century than are alive today. Stay alive long enough, and you'll also be able to maybe snap up some vacant homes in unspoiled on countryside in some countries, depopulated countries. In fact, we're actually starting to see this depopulation already, and some of it's quite dramatic. China's already just recorded its first fall in population in more than 60 years. And I've seen some amazing projections that China could even lose half its population before the end of the century, half as many Chinese. China now joins a long list of countries whose population is shrinking, in Europe particularly. Countries like Italy, Ukraine, Georgia, Latvia, Lithuania, Bosnia, Albania, Romania, Portugal, Poland, Greece. It's really spreading. And some of this is actually quite amazing. In Bulgaria, it's lost a quarter of its people in just 30 years. A quarter fewer Bulgarians in Bulgaria. Mainly from migration, though. They've gone to richer countries looking for work. Also, Japan, outside Europe, there's Japan, there's Venezuela, there's Syria, Puerto Rico, smaller countries as well. Russia's population is also starting to shrink again. Now, of course, it's not new to know that birth rates in the West, that countries like Spain, very Catholic, even there, birth rates in the West have fallen for a while now. But they're also now falling even in the third world, because there's more birth control, for one, as people get richer, and also because more younger workers move to richer countries in Europe, for instance, United States, looking for more money, more opportunities. Now, for the poorer countries, this could be a real problem. A poor country with an aging workforce, well, that's going to struggle not to get poorer. They don't have the money, the social security system, to look after a very old population when they don't have many young workers to actually do the work, nor many immigrants wanting to do it for them, not in third world countries. America, much luckier that way. But let's not be gloomy about all that. Humans are smart enough to maybe figure out that one as well. For now, let's learn the lesson before we let global warming scare us for a day longer, before we have to live for another 55 years to say, I told you this global warming scare was fake. I don't have all those years up my sleeve. I want to be there a bit earlier than that. And the lesson is this: end of world scares are usually bunkum, and the green ones especially. Because, for one very good reason, forget these pessimists, humans are actually better able to adapt than most of those doomsters reckon.